Okay, hi everyone. I think we are live. Hello, friends.
Hello, hi. Thank you very much for taking the time. I'm really excited for being here with all of you today. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Beliz, and thank you everyone for making it today for our LinkedIn Live. And
Yeah,
maybe
excited to be here and excited about our conversation.
yeah. Maybe before we wait for people to come in, maybe I can tell a little bit of how I met you guys and why we're here. And we can also maybe later on move to some quick intros and start our conversation and maybe open for some Q&As if that's okay. All
That would
right.
be great. That would be great.
All right. Well, so a few weeks ago, I was at the Emerge event in Miami and I met Anna, and we have a very interesting conversation. We were talking about communication and how this is impacting teams now that most of our teams are working remotely. And we were talking about Nearshore, and Anna has a fantastic company. Maybe she can talk a little bit more about it. And then we were talking about communication. We imagined that we could do something together, a podcast, a live, and this live was created. And I invited Chris for the live. Chris has been in our podcast and he's a friend, and it was really nice when we had our first conversation, and it was super fun as well when Belize also accepted. Belize worked at Deel, and she accepted to share her experience as well with communication in Nearshore. And today we're going to be talking more about how to enhance communication and boost productivity in Nearshore collaboration. And well, I think we're going to talk about do's and don'ts and failures, practical tips, and how to make it successful. So I don't know, maybe we can start with some quick introductions if you guys can share a little bit about yourself. And yeah, that'd be great.
I can go first.
Sure.
Hi, everyone. My name is Belize. I am based out of Toronto, Canada, working at Deel. And for those who are not familiar with Deel, is an all-in-one HR solution for global workforce. So goes very well with today's topic on working with remote teams. I am director of partnerships for North America and Latin America, and super excited to be part of this conversation today.
Awesome. Thanks, Belize.
Okay, I'll go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Anna Gandrabura. I'm the founder of English for IT. We are a very specialized, as you can hear by the name, service that helps professionals in tech improve their communication skills, as well as language skills, as well as soft skills. Well, we call them power skills. So we work with international workforce and nearshore, offshore teams, helping them improve their communication so that we so that they can be more productive, the teams can be more productive. Yeah, I'm excited about this conversation, and over to Chris, I think now.
Thank you. My name is Chris Rodriguez. I've been in tech for the past 20 years, working with startups in different stages. Currently, I work for Kipo Health. It's a EMR dedicated specifically to addiction treatment. And I run the research and development team in there, and I'm also an architect. So I'm really excited to share my findings and experiences with you guys.
Fantastic. Thank you all. Well,
Breno, what about you? What's
yeah,
your introduction?
let me make a quick intro here as well. Well, I'm Breno. I'm the founder of Ventura Tech, and we've been helping clients build teams, mostly tech teams and mostly nearshore teams. Most of our clients, they are building operations in Latin America, out of the US or Europe. And well, on our day to day here, we noticed that communication is the main issue for all our clients and for candidates. And I think that it's very important, the discussion that we're going to have here. So maybe if anybody has any questions, we can talk about them in the end of the conversation. But maybe we can start with our first question. And I wanted to ask you, Belize, if you can tell us what are the key benefits of nearshore collaboration and why is it becoming increasingly important?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and that's something that actually Deel as a company has started thinking as like the first mission statement. I think number one is really thinking about talent is a global aspect. Like early days, we used to think about talent is within the radius of where the office is located, and that obviously started changing, especially after pandemic. But people started thinking like talent is everywhere, and why not we find the best talent that we're looking for? Why to limit to the borders of where you're located if the best talent is across the ocean? So I think like one of the best benefit is to get that access to the diverse pool of talent and really find the right person for your team regardless of where they're located. One of the main things that we see in my current role is that when you have a nearshore collaboration, you also have 24/7 operations. You don't have to kind of wait in one place and have the operations stop after 5 or 6 p.m. With diverse teams and global workforce, the operation continues 24/7, and that's a huge win for customers, partners, and obviously the company as a whole. And like one other thing that we really notice is, especially for the companies that want to work on, making the company global, testing out different markets. What is the best way to really test out the market is finding the local talent. Like you need someone to understand the culture. You need someone who can actually step on an office door and meet the client in person. The language. So like I always say, like even in my team right now, we have local, partnership managers. They're all located in their region because it's something that is so important. They have the local knowledge in the market, and every region is super different. It's not something that you can just take and copy paste for every region. So all these different collaborations actually help the companies go more global and have the local expertise to really, dive into that pool.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Beliz. Thanks for sharing. And it's interesting here at our company. We do a lot of like U.S. clients, for example, hiring and building teams in Latin America, and that's a natural course because there's a talent shortage everywhere, and they are trying to attract people from other regions. And recently, we are also seeing the other way around, like Brazilian companies going and tapping other markets as well. So it's funny, like how things are, like happening today and moving, right?
Yeah. Actually, what we realize internally is Latin America is one of our fastest growing markets right now because of that same reason. And obviously, from an employer standpoint, they are looking at cost efficiencies, like what are the things that they can cut down on in terms of operational costs. Like having an office is a standalone one of the biggest costs that a company can occur. So definitely seeing it and seeing that collaboration has been really amazing. Like for Deel, we have around 4,000 people and they're all over 100 plus countries. So definitely right in the middle of that collaboration myself and seeing it firsthand has been an amazing experience.
I would like to jump in since we started, talking about this international and like creating this global workforce, right? This is a totally great point, Belize, that if you want to expand in certain markets, definitely it's really important that you have someone local because you can't know like some nuances of the way people do business in these countries. But then once you establish your international workforce, you have to make sure that everyone can communicate with each other properly, right? Because you might have an office in Brazil and then you have an office in the US, and then let's say you have an office in Eastern Europe. I'm Ukrainian, so I'm from Eastern Europe. And then like you have to make sure that all the partners, because like I think we can call them partners too in this case, right? All the partners can understand each other properly. And this is where we actually end up, facing those communication failures. And this is when we might not understand why things are not going the way we are used to them going, right? And this is when we have to admit that the culture of communication is key here. And this is actually one of our most popular events and training programs on cross-cultural differences, because the failures that happen, and like when we end up in a situation when we don't understand why things don't work the way we want them, or when the productivity of the team is decreasing, is because, for example, people might not just understand that they have to do something.
Yeah.
It's the way people, let's say, request things or demand things might be different in different cultures, right? Or the way people react to feedback. You won't believe it, but once I was working with this tech client, and we were doing communication training for the team, and they ended up having this unpleasant situation that their graphic designer or UI UX designer, I don't remember now exactly, but they got fired because the client didn't want to work with them, because you know what happened? That was a pure communication failure. That was a pure communication issue, because the designer presented the mock-up to a client, and the client responded, "I'm not sure about like this," and the designer did not understand that "I'm not sure about something" to a native English speaker means "I don't like it." It's a polite way to say no, I don't like it. Technically, if you could read between the cross-cultural lines, you would understand that you would have to present something else, right? Instead, the designer took it literally, that the client needs more time to think, because "I'm not sure" literally means I don't have an answer right now,
Exactly.
So the designer didn't do anything, and the client thought that the designer was incompetent and unprofessional because he never heard from the designer, like he never received a follow-up with another mock-up or something like that. So unfortunately, the designer was not working with the client anymore. So they got fired from that particular project, but it was the communication failure. So I think when we are thinking about building this global international team or saving money, right? We want to hire international workforce. I mean, outsourced workforce, because we want to save money as well. We have to understand that to realize our ROI on investing and hiring the outsourced team, we have to take account communication differences and potential communication failures. Do you guys have, or maybe you faced any communication failures, or maybe just interesting cases, stories all the time?
All the time.
Chris, tell your story.
Yeah. I'm in tech, so the communication challenges are all over the place. The importance of having a nearshore team for tech specifically is key for growth. But I mean, all the either startup owners or small business owners, maybe when you're enterprise level, not so much. But at that stage, you need to be prepared to go nearshore or offshore, or to hire someone like across the world, because you need to learn how to delegate, you need to learn how to communicate, and then you need to be able to push that work outside of your office. That's why startups grow so small in the garage, or they go in a small office, or like from friends and people that are really close by used to. But it's more common because communication flows in a different way. So we have even from the reaction that you read on body language on people, you say something on camera and the other person reacts funny, and you're like, no, I didn't mean it that way. It's cool. But none of us are speaking native languages. My native language is Spanish, and I'm speaking with someone whose native language is German. And when I say something, the person reacts funny, and it's like, oh, no, that's not what I meant. I'm sorry. So it is a challenge. It is a challenge that we all need to generate some compassion about. It's like, this is new for everybody. And it is very productive. It definitely saves costs. It definitely improves skills. Their skills are not randomly available in the market, and then you find them across the world. And it is fantastic. It improves the quality of the products that we're delivering, but we need to be prepared for that.
That's funny. I think that one point that you touched there, Chris, is when here as an agency, sometimes clients come to us and they say, I want somebody that communicates very well. And when you go in Nearshore, you also have to prepare your leadership, right? They need to be very good communicators as well, just so that they have the right habits, routines, and tools to make sure that they can then make sure that the Nearshore team will be on the same page and communicating well with the on-site team as well. So I think that this is skill. You Belize as well. You're working for Deel, so you're promoting this as well.
Exactly.
The communication worldwide, so it's hard, right?
Yeah, for sure. And like to both of you, your points, Anna and Chris, I think I see this every day, both internally and externally. Like 100 plus cultures means that you need to understand each one of them separately and react to that separately. There are some individuals that, I'm also originally from Turkey. So I got to Canada about 11 years ago, and that was adjustment for me. And it wasn't even a workplace setting. Understanding the way people communicate, sometimes you can be too direct. There could be some language errors that, you directly translate from your native language, and it's just is a rude way of saying things in a different culture. So it's definitely adaptation. But one thing is like having an open mind. Like going into conversations, knowing that that person is from a different culture. So some things may not look the same to you. And just like thinking the best of the people rather than assuming the worst, I think helps a lot with these communication styles. But for example, in my team, we have lots of diversity, people all around the place. And even the way you would, manage them on a one-on-one basis looks different. The process is the same. The documentations are the same. But the way to get to them, the way to provide the feedback is quite different. Some people like the directness and some people cannot handle the directness. It's the cultural aspect of it. So as a leader, you need to really take that into consideration if you want that person to really be motivated and perform to their maximum capacity. Because I'm a huge believer on open communication and continuous feedback. But that can only get there if you know how they comprehend these things, and you need to kind of alter and customize it in a way that gets to them. And it is exciting to me, but definitely 100 plus cultures is so much room for failures. It's just learning from them and making sure that you don't do the same mistakes again.
It can be overwhelming, 100 cultures, I believe. But back to your point, Belize, we all obviously we all believe in emotional intelligence, right? This is something that helps people generally communicate better and understand other people better, if from their own culture, from other cultures. But also, if you work with so many cultures on a daily basis, or even if you're planning to work with the new culture, being culturally intelligent, this is another thing that I believe people have to keep in mind or take into account, right? Cultural intelligence. In other words, this is what you Belize just said, right? You have to be open-minded, and you just have to be aware that there might be a different culture. The way they react to your comment might be different, not because they're a bad person, but because this is not how it's done in their culture, in their country where they come from. And definitely for leadership, right? I mean, as a leader, you are a lifelong learner. Hopefully that this will at least we can make sure you're a good leader if you're a lifelong learner, right? So you always learn, and like you said, working with so many different cultures, like in your case, 100 plus cultures, you can't possibly learn about every culture, but you can learn by actually working with them, right? So being working and learning in every situation, in every instance is important. But what I have noticed in my career, that sometimes people are not aware of these things because they just don't think about them. And even it's not about taking a course necessarily, right? I mean, it definitely helps, watching a webinar or something like this, listening to this discussion, this helps. But sometimes we don't even think about some basic things, especially for someone who never works with people outside of their culture, right? And I usually observe it in the United States because if you work if you live in the States and you only work with local vendors and partners and companies, and then all of a sudden you hire an outsourced nearshore team, and then you continue working in your usual manner, which might not be working for that team, for those stakeholders. And this is what I've noticed, that sometimes you just don't realize that the problem may be that the culture, not even the language, right? But the language is a big thing too. Like you said, sometimes we just translate things that sound like super rude, super
Sure.
direct. Yeah.
And I think you, oh, sorry, Chris.
No, please.
I was going to say, I think you touched a really good point on emotional intelligence. It's sometimes overlooked in a company space because we are always told what's best for business, let's do that. But what's best business could also mean what's best for the people, because people who are motivated and liking their jobs perform a lot higher than your average person. So neglecting the cultural differences and just focusing on, the work can lead to certain issues, like not getting the work done the right way that was expected, the feedback that was provided not being productive, actually being counterproductive, that, they're all of a sudden they receive a constructive feedback that they're not used to, and they start looking for different jobs because they have this random fear of being let go. Well, in fact, that was not the case at all. They were just trying to get some feedback to you, but as a maybe new to this role, new to this different cultural collaboration, people might not get it. So I think that's why it's important to understand the people, to know what are the certain ways of speaking and giving them directives to get to the best performance. And retaining talent is extremely important in the tech world, as we all know here, because replacing it is an extreme amount of cost and time that goes into that. So retaining talent also means understanding how to get to these people. And if that means you need to have an emotional culture, intelligence to really, push that and make sure that it's, something to be considered when you're performance managing these individuals.
Agreed. I have also noticed a growing trend of companies looking for offshore talent, but in their same time zone. So they're getting much more aware of what they can deal with on a regular basis. I cannot deal with a 13-hour time difference. I cannot deal with language barriers. I cannot deal with the different holidays. That's a quick grounding experience. It's you hire a team in the other side of the world, and they have different holidays, and you're expecting them to perform meaningful work on a week that they have off. And if you don't honor that, then productivity goes down. So those are key factors to evaluate when you're trying to go offshore, and just to measure your readiness to go offshore. It's am I ready to deal with a 13-hour time difference or not? Or do I need to just get ready and then transition into it?
Yeah, that's why Latin America is so popular for the US clients, because it's pretty much in the same time zone. Yeah, there is a big challenge from what I know, because we do language training. There is a big challenge with the language, but at least there's the same time zone. Yeah, so for example, with the few other countries, you would have better language communication, but this is far away. Yeah, it's a different time zone.
They use professionals like myself that are proficient in both as anchor points to do the fluid translation into requirements and just specking and not scoping work that needs to be out, which it's also one of the things that companies need to be prepared for. If you want to go offshore and you're not ready, then someone in-house needs to be dealing with that.
That's very interesting. Yeah, maybe we can talk a little bit about that. I know that from our experience here as well, when you see companies going nearshore and starting and ending contracts, I don't know, for the past 12 months here, it was never because of the technical skills. The professionals were good, but it was always well, I'm trying to say something to my VP of engineering there, but he wants me to write this in some way that I cannot understand, or maybe the person is not joining the dailies, or maybe
Or
it's
the
the way.
person is never speaking at dailies. That's another thing.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that like the example that you gave, Anna, the graphic designer, that's very interesting. Like that's a simple thing, right? Like that's a problem that could have been solved there, and things could have continued. But yeah, I think that maybe we can even talk more about these, like some real examples of failures in the communication and how
Yeah, that's
to.
always the best. Like talking about failures, that's always the best. I just want to make a quick comment, Breno, about what you said. The VP of engineering, how to translate what he says or what she says, or what they mean. When we talk about technical professionals, right? Well, I mean, the tech industry is not only it's not only tech jobs, tech roles, right? There are many non-technical roles, obviously. But when we talk about technical roles, there is another communication failure that can occur. That's like too technical language, right? Whenever you have to communicate with different stakeholders and you are a tech person, you just don't realize how technical you are, explaining things like in a very, very technical way, which scares people away, obviously, if you don't have a technical background. And let's say most clients don't have technical background, right? So let's say if I'm a client, I want to build an app, I'm hiring you as a company, and you have your offshore talent and your engineers, and they present a demo and like they talk about this. It's going to be overload. Usually there's a lot of like technical terms. I'm going to freak out as a client. I'm not going to work with you, right? Chris, you're technical. You
That happens a lot.
Yeah. So
There's a gap in that translation layer that needs to be figured out before you actually go offshore. When you, as a technical person, just present a project to a non-technical person, that gap is always there. So either the person listening comes to the middle and asks a bunch of questions, or you try to oversimplify the idea and then build up from there. But that's not a skill that is easy to find elsewhere. So it's something that you need to work with and go into, and then doing it in multiple languages becomes exponentially harder. So that's definitely a challenge.
That's really interesting. Yeah, and maybe we can even talk more about how to increase this productivity, right, in nearshore teams. Maybe Chris, if you can share more about your day-to-day and how to better improve this.
So in my current position, we work with a very, very I would say oiled machine in India that they're fantastic, and they have their own infrastructure and their own everything, right? So when they communicate and interface with us, they're just like a working perfect machine. They know what to do, and they communicate internally, and whatever needs to be communicated to us, it's filtered and ready to go. So at that level, we don't have many problems. But when you're smaller and you're trying to interface with your offshore team by yourself, I've had many different kinds of issues, from the semantics of what you're asking, all the way down to the way that the code is written. So you're asking for something that does like, I don't know, payment platform, and they're not just giving you what you're asking for. They're just going the extra mile, but in a different direction. And then we need to undo it, and then it's pricey. It is very complicated. I've seen different kinds of challenges where either the code is not where it needs to be because they didn't understand, or the code is now documented so nobody else can use it because it's not properly written, is not technically written, or it's too technical and it looks like written in ChatGPT, and then nobody knows what to do with it. So which is the other challenge. It's like, okay, I'll put this in Google Translate from a native language and everybody should get it. And that's not the way it reads.
Yeah.
So using the tools doesn't mean that you're effectively communicating.
I think like using, writing code, and I don't know, obviously you write code in English, but like using your native language when writing code for some comments or reviews, this is a really bad idea generally. But I just like, Chris, when you were saying, I just wanted to comment, like whenever you are given a task, right, like to write a code, and you have to give this task to someone from a different culture or country, and I think Beliz also commented on this as well, you need to over communicate. So the power of over communication on a multicultural team is immense, technically, right? So whenever we delegate things, right, whenever we assign tasks, over communication is your key to success, right? This is like, because if you over communicate, and then again, to our audience who's watching this, over communication means that you communicate a task, or you just say what you need to say in a very detailed way. Just imagine you're talking to, I don't know, a 5th grader or, you know, a 10-year-old, and you need to explain in details because they don't know many things, right? Now, I don't mean that you have to talk to somebody like as if they're a child, you know, not like that. I'm just saying, keep in mind that this person might not have the knowledge that you have. That's why you need to give them more details, more information than you would give to someone from your culture, right? And technically, I like to compare it, like imagine you just got married and you've been married for 2 years versus you've been married for 22 years, right? How do you communicate as a newlyweds? You communicate like you don't know much about each other, right? This is a new thing for you. So the same thing working with someone from a different culture. You always have to treat them as if, like, you know, they don't have the same experience culturally, emotionally, communicatively. Like in any case, they don't have the same experience. That's why you just need to share more information with them. And I think that when you keep over communication in mind, and especially in American culture, because for example, in my culture, in Ukraine, when we want to ask to do something, we just say, like, do this for me, right? We're very direct. I don't know if this is the same in Turkey, Belize.
Yeah. No sugarcoating.
Yes, very, very direct, right? I think in Latin America it's a little bit different. Latin Americans are more
different.
very different, very polite, very, like, you know, go beat about the bush, as they say, right? But like in Ukraine, I'm gonna just say, do this for me, and I'm not gonna even think about explaining why I need it. This is not over communicating, right? When over communicating means explaining why, but like for some cultures, like you know, in the US, it's part of the culture. It's not even like over communicating. If I need something, I'm going to explain why I need it. I'm going to give more information. But to some cultures, it is over communicating, like explaining why I need this and even how it can be done, right? So for example, Chris, back to your example with coding, if you want them to write a piece of code, you might explain why you need this piece of code and how you expect it to look or how you expect it to be done if you want to receive the result. It's like working with ChatGPT, right? If you want your prompt to work from the first time right away. Yeah.
For sure. And just to add on to that, Anna, I think one very important piece is having it written down. Because when you're chatting with people on a, you know, online setting, words can get lost. That's why any important update, anything about their performance, any feedback, I always try to do a follow-up just to recap our conversation, XYZ. So yeah, you need to have it written for multiple reasons so that they can go back and understand what they need to work on, so that they can, you know, if there's any performance management issues, there's something written proof that you, you know, provided to your employee. So that's kind of what I always try to do, like both verbal and written, because on the other way around, sometimes you write something on, you know, the platforms like Slack or Microsoft Teams. Same thing with the culture. Like I am so used to just saying, do it. But then all of a sudden, like, they're like, okay, like, I'm so sorry. Or like, oh, did I miss something? I'm like, no, I was just like, without thinking, I'm writing it down. So certain sensitive topics, I always try to get even if it's a quick 5-minute chat, just so that they can see my face, they can hear my tone, especially when it comes to providing constructive feedback, is a lot easier than doing it written. But that doesn't mean that you should just do it verbally, because written means it stays forever. And that's why I always encourage leaders to do both, especially if there's cultural differences, even sometimes, sometimes gender differences. Men can interpret things different than women. And we want to make sure that there's no, difference and everyone gets what they need to do. So highly recommend both verbal and written feedback with that communication style.
That's
I
awesome.
love it. Actually, guys, I don't know if you see that, but we have a chat and we do have some comments about our conversation. So here's a comment from someone from Brazil, I guess. Sometimes we are more polite than necessary here in Brazil, which leads to the over-communication you mentioned. So I believe that that's about like being polite when asking for something or giving feedback. I heard this actually comment from one of my colleague from Latin America who works in sales. And he was like, Anna, I love working with Americans because they're always direct. Like they want to buy from you, they say we buy from you. They don't want to buy, they say this is not the right time. Let's connect with you later. When I'm trying to sell to Latin Americans, I never hear a no. And this is so confusing because they just like keep you hanging. They like, you're just like there and they never say no. And even though he is actually, I think he's Argentinian, he's from Latin America, but because he works in sales and because he works in tech sales and mostly with the US, he just, I think he became more Americanized in this way. And he was like, I can't working with Latin Americans because like I can never have a proper table with my leads. Who is a good lead for me? Who is not a good lead for me?
For us in the projects I've been like recently participating in, it's key to define a few things. One is the way of communicating. What's the most effective way of communicating? Of course, where are we memorializing all the documentation and all the requirements? But recently, we have been working on definitions of done. So what constitutes a completed task and what needs to happen? So it's not just what I can write, it's just a rule set, because the over-explaining could be perceived as condescending, depending on your cultural background. And I'm not trying to be condescending. I'm just trying to get the value that I'm trying to squeeze from you with this specific task. And that's also falls into preparation. So when I switch from one team that's local with the team that is remote, I need to be prepared to put X amount of extra time to be over communicative and to be over. I need to take an additional level of care to that communication going out and that documentation that for what my expectation is, and that takes a serious amount of time. So preparation is key for adopting a offshore strategy.
Also, like it's very interesting, like working with different cultures in a sales setting. Obviously, we have sales teams all across the world, and you're saying Latin America is really hard to say and like to get a no, so you continue pushing, but they're actually not interested. And same way, like in Middle East, like something, because I'm also familiar with that culture, there's so much negotiation. Like they will never accept the original price, so there will always be so much more negotiating on the price. So that's actually very interesting. That's why it kind of goes back to my original point of like having local talent to understand like the culture and how to communicate with the buyers in this specific example. Because if you put someone, maybe from US in that conversation, they would be quite shocked in the level of negotiation and the not liking the pricing, or again, like different challenges where someone is unable to say no or they're too direct. So salesperson is like just kind of gives up trying, but in reality there's like still room for convincing. So that's why I think it's still great to have that nearshore collaboration so that people get to meet their own local markets and whatever the product or service is, provide that with the local knowledge that they have.
Definitely. I don't think any American would be comfortable negotiating in Middle East. I was just reading a book about that. And that's really tough. That's not just part of the culture. That's not how you were born, I mean, in Ukraine, we negotiate. I mean, of course, not as the Middle East, obviously, but it's really common, especially from my hometown. We're like on the Black Sea. I'm from Odessa originally. So it's like more like a relaxed kind of style, but in other areas in the same country, it might be a little bit different too. So I actually wanted to also add to what Chris said. You have to also be aware of your company culture. And this is not only the culture of people that work there, but the company culture, right? Again, what is the way that you give feedback inside the company? What is the way, like, how do you give tasks? How do you assign tasks? There should be some company culture guidelines how to do that, right? And again, if you're a small company, I don't know, maybe like up to 50 people. And even though everyone comes from a different culture, if you have your company culture guidelines written out well, you might not face so much actual like people culture problems. Because, for example, if you say that in your company, whenever you want to assign a task, you should write it down. And this is the template, how you write things down. This is over communication right there, and nobody's going to feel condescended, or nobody's going to ask questions. Why should I do this? This is the way we do it in the company. So there is company culture can actually be very helpful when you have to work with international workforce. But then again, it depends on the size, like we mentioned earlier today. It depends on the size of the company. It depends again how it all started. But I've worked with one company who were a smaller company in the US, but they are all remote. They are a remote first company, and their workforce comes from different parts of the world, different cultures really. And but they were pretty good there. Their founder was very detailed. Is a very detailed person. So they have a lot of guidelines how things should be done for developers, for engineers, and for other roles. So they worked pretty well because of that. So the company culture is also important, but I think a lot of times it's overlooked because it's a lot of work to be done, right? A lot of things to align on.
Sure, especially in a remote work environment, I think it's extra important because you don't have someone you can just crack a joke, tap on their shoulder, and have coffee over a quick chat. You need to put extra effort to build that culture in a remote setting. And that's why people stay. So take the additional time, repurpose the team meetings to do something about getting to know each other, playing games. There's so many different ways of team building activities online now that everyone is going into this remote world. You really need to build that culture for obviously retaining the top talent, but also understanding the gaps of the different cultures you're working with. So I always try to do once a quarter just to have a morale boost, get together and talk about something not work related is very important because I don't get to see these people at all. There are people that I don't know how tall they are because I only see them from the screen. So it becomes very important in terms of building really strong relationships with them and making sure that they feel comfortable to come to you with any issues and communicate that freely to you. So I actually double down on that, especially in a remote work environment where you can't throw Christmas parties or have some other celebrations at the office, like a happy hour on a Friday evening. So that's my 2 cents.
What do you? I have a question, guys. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. To everyone, what do you do in your companies, or what does the company do to make sure everyone is on the same page in terms of culture, company culture, and in terms of communication culture?
So my current company puts a lot of effort on being really communicative about the expectations and inclusion. They do workshops. They do quarterly meetings where they present to everyone the current state of the company and projects and status and projections. So they're really good at communicating. So also the PR team is always on top of our social media and showcasing events and what are we doing to improve certain areas of the business. So they're doing great. And to my previous comment, it's about the small things. It's about defining the rule set but not as a manual for communication. It's just the small things that happen every day. We have a rule in the project I work for. No task gets assigned in Slack or Teams. Everything needs to have a ticket, and you cannot get assigned anything to do on a phone call or on a video call or in Slack or Teams. And that sounds trivial and basic, but it defines how we communicate, and it's key for us to say, well, you didn't write it down. I didn't know that. I mean, we talked about it, but if it's not properly scoped, and scoping has another set of rules. So this is how we write specs for something to get built. So, and it grows into culture and grows into process. It grows into many different verticals inside the company. So I think Kipu specifically is really good at making sure that those branches of being specific and being direct and being over communicative are like well taken care of. So I'm happy with the way that they have been handling it, and it's also a guideline for me to communicate with someone else.
That's fantastic. I don't know if Beliz, if you want to share a little bit as well about your company.
For sure. I think, Deel is built on the remote work. Like, we actually do not have an office anywhere. We do some, co-working areas to meet our co-workers in the same city, but that's about it. So it becomes super important to have that system in place where, there's collaboration across the team members, where you're not necessarily in touch with in real life. You don't see them, you can't, again, I keep saying that, but you can't tap on their shoulders. So it becomes extremely important to have that ongoing communication. Like, that's something, as Anna says, like, over communication, it's something I double down on, especially when it comes to the real life things. I'm assuming all of the companies on this meeting here have performance cycles, right? Like, when you go into a performance management cycle. And one thing I believe is, like, I don't want to go into that thinking that the person I'm going to speak to is going to be shocked by the feedback I'm going to give, meaning that they should already know what's working and what's not working, because that should come in a timely manner. We should never wait on something that they did today. Oh, wait, actually their performance reviews next month. Let me write it down on my piece of paper and I can give that feedback to them later. You need to act really fast, because then it becomes redundant. That's no longer a case. It was a one-time thing, and all of a sudden you're bringing it up out of nowhere. So I always try to give feedback and also ask for feedback. As you know, a lot of the organizations do like the downward feedback, but upward feedback is actually how, as managers and leaders, we get better. And if you do not have a system in place as a leader where there is no surveys or anything, there's so much you can do as a leader if you want to improve yourself. Like, as Anna said, it's continuous learning. And if the company doesn't have existing systems for performance management, just create an anonymous survey. Send it to your team, get all the great and ugly feedback that needs to happen so you can get to the next level. You can be a better manager and leader for themselves. And one day they can become that leader as well. So I definitely spend a lot of time in that section, because I want to make sure that these individuals are getting the support, getting the resources they need for the maximum performance for their work, and also can see a career behind what they're doing today, like as a next step, like what they want to do. And the feedback session is the only way to get there, because if they want to be a people manager and I never have that conversation, that's just a gap on my management. I need to know that that person is interested in the leadership round rather than continuing as an individual contributor. And those conversations don't happen every day. You need to make time for those conversations.
Yeah, you need to initiate. I'm glad that you mentioned feedback. This can be the whole different topic for the whole different show, because I'm really big, like what you just said, this is exactly what we what we cover in our programs on feedback. And the one tip that I share typically with people asking for this upfront feedback, like don't ask for positive feedback, ask for constructive feedback, because constructive feedback actually helps you grow. Because like when people praise you all the time, this is great for your ego, but like, how is it going to help you? How is it going to help you improve? How is it going to help you to get to the next level? But again, like getting back to the culture issue, right? Because like we're talking about international workforce, asking for feedback, and giving, receiving, and asking for feedback is a really touchy subject. So you really have to be aware, as we mentioned today, of like who you're speaking with, how they accept feedback, how they react to feedback. But I would like just say, for example, if you're working with management here in the United States, in North America, in Canada are the most polite people. So yeah, maybe next time, Beliz, you can tell us more about Canadian
things.
culture. Yeah, because like from what I know, this is the most polite people on planet Earth. Can you guys see me?
I think you're frozen.
Yeah, but we can hear you.
No, I definitely agree though. Like feedback as a standalone is an important subject, and constructive is great. That also sets you up for next steps, but hearing positive is also very important, especially for morale, because if you're only hearing constructive feedback from your management, that can get very draining and demotivating as well. So you need to know where you're good at, and you need to know what you need to improve on. So I always think of it as a balance. Like obviously, yes, like you spend more time on the constructive side, but you cannot not mention the positive side, because that's what keeps a lot of the people going.
As a manager, you need to put yourself out there. So it's a challenge, it's a personal challenge, just to create the setting to just be out there and say, I want to hear what you have to say, and I will be okay with whatever comes. And it's not always the case, but as a manager with the capacity and need to grow, you need to put yourself out there and say, I want to listen.
Yeah. And also, like, maybe this is a good segue to a topic that, I come across with all the time between different leaders across remote companies, is like, how do you manage the team while being remote? Like, how do you define that line of being a micromanager and being a good leader? Because, we're all in environments where we trust our employees to do the work, but we don't see them. We don't know if they're in front of their laptop. We don't know if they're actually doing the work. Obviously, you have the results, that something like it's the output that we can see, but the input is something that you really need to build the trust on. So like, I think what's the right balance is something that I always ask myself. Like, I want to be able to make my team as autonomous as possible and give them the authority. But like, how do we make sure that we are really providing the maximum performance for the company? It's one of the challenges, I would say, with the remote work. You just need to make sure that you really hire the top talent, so you don't micromanage the people, but you micromanage the process. And as long as the process is solid, I think the talent speaks for itself.
The investment on structure.
Correct.
So just creating the framework to be successful, and then adding the people, and not the other way around. We have faced like many challenges, like any other company, where visibility becomes a challenge, and then we need to shuffle things around, implement new processes, design new strategies, and communication has always been one of those challenges that leads to growth. So we create new strategies, create new not just frameworks, but approaches to face the challenge, and constant movement, constant change. Everything adds up, and that's how you create a successful team. So
that, and constant change is something that I'm extremely familiar with. But Chris, to your point, I think managers and leaders need to be more out there. So that's why I always say, like, accountability is so important. Like if you have to micromanage the person, perhaps you don't have the best talent, because there's no reason why two people should be doing the job. Like there's a dedicated headcount, and they should have the full accountability to perform that job, with your guidance, with your support, with the resources. But autonomy and being accountable is like the key things that I think an individual contributor, or really anyone, needs to perform the best in a remote environment, where there's not much of a physical seeing of like if the work is being done or not.
That's fantastic. Guys, I'm loving this conversation. And I think that there are so many ideas here. Like we've talked about the failures, we talk about best practices, we've shared some real cases. So I think that we are recording this. So we're going to post this later on. The marketing teams will work on some clips. And I think that we're going to have like a gold mine here. There are so many advices here and tips. And I don't know, I feel like we could go for for many times here, but I also want to be conscious about your time. Maybe we should do another round, another date, if you guys agree. But yeah, I wanted to thank you guys very much, and just to be being conscious here of your time. Thank you a lot for taking the time, for being here, and for sharing. And it was really productive. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure that everybody did. But yeah, maybe if you guys want to share a little bit, and we can wrap up and conclude our live here. But thank you very much, guys, for taking the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Lovely conversation and great meeting everyone online. Thank you, Breno, for putting this together and bringing everyone together.
Appreciate it.
I love learning from you too. Thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Thank you, guys.